Welcome back to the Baddie Girls Book Club podcast. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Stephanie.
And we are two chatty baddies who love to talk about books.
For this week's author spotlight, we have the wonderful Sarah Marie Page, who has just released her debut novel, Illusion of Stars.
Woohoo!
Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We are excited to have you. We're excited to talk about your book. We love the vibes. We love the descriptive writing, and we are pumped to dive into it and to learn a little bit more about you and share it with our viewers. So I wanted to kind of start off learning a little bit more about you, understanding that you're an attorney by day and an author by night. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey to becoming an author, and how do you balance all of that?
Yeah, so I started out like just basically any other author who says like I've been writing since I was a little kid, and that is true of me too. When I was little, I would like sit on my dad's lap and dictate him stories about like monsters and mermaids, and he would illustrate them with Microsoft clip art and would type them out and then print them and like staple them into like little books and stuff. Wrote all through high school, and I kind of took a break when I was doing my undergrad and took a break through law school. There was my final year of law school. I was walking around campus and I saw this big poster for this like essay contest for the college, and I was like, well, that sounds fun. I haven't written anything in like a really, really long time, so I decided to enter it, and I won. I won the grand
Woo!
prize.
That's so
And
cool.
that kind of like got me back to like writing, and I went back to the book that I had started in high school, and this is not the book that I just released. This is a different book.
Yes.
But I was like, if I had written like 250 words a day, like I could have written that book 17 times over by now. So I set out a goal to just write 250 words a day. That's like a couple paragraphs, and I did that for a couple years. Ended up shelving that book that I was working on. Writing is a lot like building a house. You know how houses look because you've like seen houses, and so intuitively you're like, okay, I can build a house. But then when you start like trying to build a house, you saw off the boards in like weird places, and then you nail things
Yes.
in weird ways. And then like you're trying to piece together this house where you have like all these weird boards that are cut and all these nails. And so like that was my first book, and I just could not, like, some people can make their first book work.
Yeah.
I just could not, like, I was learning as I was doing it. Great learning experience, but I did not have the tools to be able to like go fix it. So put that one aside. Started this one with what I had learned from writing that book, and this is where we are today.
I love that so much. And I think we have learned on this podcast from different authors too that that's more common than I thought, like trunking or shelving your first book. And I can only imagine that that must be a very hard decision. But look what's come out of that. Like you said, you've learned so much about that, about the process. Your book now is incredible. I don't know what your book looked like before. I'm sure it was so great, but it's just so, I think it's really brave to spend so much time on something and realize, this isn't what I want to move forward with. And I want to take what I've learned and try something else. I think that's really, really brave.
You brought up a good point. You were just talking about how in your job you had someone share with you before that you weren't a good writer. Are you comfortable with sharing how that feedback that you had received, how that inspired this book, or even just your journey into becoming an author?
I started at that firm after being like rejected as an intern. So I started in August, and then October of the following year, so about 14 months later, the same guy who gave me the job took me to lunch, and he was like, I just want to give you some mentoring because I don't think you're getting it elsewhere. And I just wanted to let you know that you're not good at legal writing, you're not good at research, you're only good at filling out forms. When the two interns start, they're going to push you out because everybody wants to work with the best, and that's not you. And so and looking back, I'm like, I think he thought he was doing me like a favor. And I also think he was just like new to working with like young associates, because he also made the same like complaints about the interns when they started. And it was like a little bit of a vindication for me. But anyways, back to that moment, I remember like I ordered a salad because that's what I always got from this little cafe across the street. And I could not eat it. Like I was just like so sick to my stomach. And I loved this little cafe and I loved the salad. And so like not finishing the whole thing was like very, very out of character for me, but I could not eat it. And so disappeared and called my husband and was like, I think I need to find a new job. And I'm sobbing. And he's like, just get through the rest of the day. I think I hid in like the bathroom for the rest of the day. And again, this is not info that I have like shared. And I remember running into the partner towards the end of the day and he was like, oh, I was looking for you. I had a consult that I wanted you to sit in on. And I was like, how tone deaf are you to not see that you just like, like torpedoed my
Yeah.
self-confidence. And so anyways, I started another book and it was about a girl who was a nobody who wanted to become a somebody because I felt like a nobody and I really wanted to be a somebody. And so I wrote portions of that book, almost a draft. It was bad draft. A couple years later, pulled it back out, and I could really see the character arc for Izzy. But there are some passages that still survived from those like early days, and I always kept messages when people are reading those parts because I think that you can tell when an author or somebody is writing something that's like close to their heart
Mm-hmm.
because that like resonates on the page. And so like for example, the funeral scene was one of those like that stayed in the book from those really early days and did not go through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And that I always get messages when people are reading the funeral
That
scene.
was
They're like,
emotional.
that like kills me. And
Emotional.
yeah, I was like not okay when I wrote that. I
Yeah.
think you could tell on the page.
You could feel the grief.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you went through all of that. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I feel like you can see a lot of the closeness that you have with Izzy in this book and how the character develops. And I think that it says a lot that, you're so connected with that character and how well the character portrays throughout the book.
Yeah, and ultimately like it started out as a book about a nobody who wanted to become a somebody. I think as it developed throughout the years, it became a book about the people who see in us what we can't see in ourselves. Because like I had so many people who were like, "Sarah, you don't suck." And I'm like, "Yes, I do." And they were like, "No, you don't. Like you don't." And so, yeah, it started out as a book about a nobody who became a somebody, but ultimately is a stubborn ode to the people who see in us what we can't see in ourselves. There was a review that somebody just left. She emailed it to me. It was a very nice review, and it is probably the most well said, like encapsulation of the book. I will
Please read that.
read it
Yeah,
if
we
you
would
guys
love that.
want. So I'm just gonna read the little snippet. She said, "This story is about finding the person who sees you for you, who sees all of you, not just the parts you project or think are important. It's about finding the person who sees the weird parts, the vulnerable parts, the deep, dark, messed up parts. And instead of turning away, they lean in and scoop up all the broken pieces and try to pull them back together, no matter how jagged."
I love that.
Yeah. And I love knowing the meaning of that, of the reasoning, your why for writing that, and then reading the story. And then you pick up on, I mean, there is literally a line in the book. She says, "I'm nobody." And then someone else says back to her, "Nope, you're somebody." And then also, you commented about how your style of writing isn't necessarily using old fashioned language and you utilize more of a light touch world building. I'd love to hear more about how you decided to go this route and, just add your own little special touch to it.
Yeah, so I write very contemporary feeling dialogue, and for some people, it's a style thing. Some people are like, I want my fantasy dialogue to feel a little bit more fantasy-esque, and less modern, and that's totally valid. It's a personal preference thing. The way that I write and do dialogue is more modern. It's not supposed to be a historical fantasy. It just is a fun, loopy funny story with a strong emotional core. So that just it's how I write and how I do dialogue. And I would say, that style probably has developed over the course of many years, and it's probably not going to change. So if somebody is looking for like fantasy, like is bugged by modern slang in fantasy books and wants more like traditional fantasy dialogue, this is probably not the book for you, and that's okay. The cool thing about Illusion of Stars is it utilizes one of the non-romance tropes it uses is the fish out of water trope. So Izzy is very much fish out of water, not in her element. And so we get to discover like the Vold's magic along with her and the magic system for that along with her. Now she doesn't and learn all the rules all at once, and neither do we. And there's still like, you know, rules and things that she like doesn't know. But the story is filtered through her perspective, so we're kind of limited with what she knows.
I love that. I feel like it makes it very approachable too, especially some people I think really struggle getting into the fantasy genre because of that barrier of like, wow, this is a totally different world than I'm used to. I can't relate to this at all, but it felt very, very relatable and approachable.
And I will say Illusion 2, well, we're talking about like what it is and what it isn't. It's also very much a character driven novel. So if somebody is looking for like very like it has cozy vibes too. People are like cozy vibes. It doesn't have cozy stakes though, so it's not like a true cozy where the stakes are like really low. We can't get any like higher with those stakes. So cozy vibes, character driven. You know, people though universally, I will say, really like the characters and are resonating with the characters, which is so fun to see. And the romance is also pretty universally liked.
Yes, we love it. And you talked a little bit about tropes. Are you able to tell us a little bit more of what tropes we can find in your book and what readers would like it?
Yeah, so it has some enemies to lovers. It's a slow burn. Um, yeah, so definitely a slow burn romance, no insta love. There's a one horse scene, but it's not your normal one horse scene. So like it's like a kind of a bastardization of one horse scene. Uter stars around my scars vibes. People say, even the people who are like, I hate when books are comped to Taylor Swift songs, or like, I hate when books are comped to Taylor Swift songs, but this one was accurately Uter stars around my scars, so I'm okay with that. Forced proximity was one of them, and one of the things that I like to do that I had fun doing with forced proximity was like having them, so she's sent to seduce him, but they end up just like flipping each other the bird, the metaphorical bird, through like the first like half of the novel. And so I had a lot of fun writing those scenes where they're both just trying to like get the one up on the other person and just like trying to like get rid of the other person. Obviously he's trying to get rid of her completely and get her to go home. She's trying to get rid of him so that she can continue on with her like bad spy behavior. And then he's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not going anywhere."
It's so funny because I feel like reading the dialogue between the two of them, I just love the back and forth banter of like, you can tell there's so much tension and like we know where this one's gonna end up. I also really liked the fade to black, and I think you had mentioned somewhere that you said book 2 might have a little bit more spice because book 1 was fade to black, and you said, well, if I do add that, I'll write an option for people who aren't into spice. But it was really nicely done because the tension building throughout the entire book, like that's the spice that we want, you know, it's not the actual scene.
And I've had a lot of people who are like, I normally like smut and I normally like look for smut, but I didn't actually miss it here. Now there are people who are like, I like smut and I wish there was smut. So, I mean, that's been a comment too. I try and give the story like what I think it needs. And it was either like, I just, with the narrative device that I used, and that's revealed pretty early on, like in chapter 1, like what the narrative device is, and then like comes full circle like towards the end. But you know, with the narrative device, it just like having like open door spice, I don't think would have like worked super well. And it was either like open door spice or chapter 41, and I decided
Yeah.
41.
I agree. I feel like sometimes it doesn't add to the plot, but in this case, I feel like it can enhance the plot and it can go very naturally with the plot instead of being so forceful. So I also appreciate that. I love my smut, don't get me wrong, but I do love a little closed door, fade to black action as well. We love the suspense and the tension.
It's what they needed. It's cute. It's what they needed. I will say I did for funsies, right? Like an open door spicy scene that I gave to my friend Jordan for her book
Aww.
club. And that is for all the girlies who were like, we wanted the open door
Yes.
spicy scene. Like I had one reviewer who was like, I just wanted like the emotional connection that came from the spicy scenes, and I was like, okay, I'll try.
Aww.
Now, Izzy is kind of an awkward heroine, and she like awkward monologues, and so trying to make her not awkward monologue during the entire like bonus spicy scene, I was like, you would awkward the monologue
Yes.
if I let you.
We relate deeply. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, we love that you're a bedroom floor writer. How did that space kind of come about for you, and what tips do you have for other writers and readers to create this cozy, wonderful place that kind of just keeps them in the zone? Because I know even as a reader, I get distracted left and right when I'm reading.
Yeah, so that's kind of funny how that actually started. So we gotta go back to like college for like bedroom floorness. And I did my undergrad in humanities. And in order to graduate, you needed to get to a 300 level language course. Now, my brain just does not like work with
Yeah.
learning second languages. I've tried, and it just like it's one of those things that just like does not really like stick the way my brain is wired. And so I put it off until the last possible second. And the only thing I could take to get me to the 300 level class fast enough was Latin. And so, and Latin like counted. And so I ended up taking my last few semesters in college, these like, 5 credit Latin classes. So they were like these like really
Yeah.
long, like kind of intense Latin classes. And honestly, guys, I still like it was easier for me to memorize the passages that were going to be on the test than to memorize
Yeah,
than to
yeah,
learn the
yeah,
Latin
yeah.
to like read the passages. And so that's what I ended up doing is I would just end up like memorizing like these like long like passages from Caesar's Gallic
Oh.
Wars. Um, and they surrendered themselves and all their things to Caesar is a pretty common phrase that was used. Anyways, very bad at learning second languages, and I would always do my Latin homework in the bathtub. So I kind of like Pavlov trained myself to do like things that, and I don't want to like I Pavlov trained myself to like focus in the
That's
bathtub.
awesome.
So
Love that.
I also used to like write in the bathtub like a fair amount as well, and so I even like got I used to flip my laundry hamper upside down because it was the right height and like stick my computer on the bottom of the laundry hamper and then like type while I was like taking a bath.
I like hearing about the process too, because I feel like every author has kind of different styles and there's so many different ways to write. So I always find it very interesting to hear like how you actually go about in writing these books.
I love it. Where can our readers find your book and follow along your journey?
So right now it is available on all major retailers. One of the things that I've noticed is a lot of ARC readers are going and buying physical copies. I actually had more physical book pre-orders than ebook pre-orders, which was super
Wow.
surprising to me. I did not. I thought ebook pre-orders were going to be more because the ebook is
Yeah.
cheaper than the physical book, but it's not even close. I think there's 50 more physical book pre-orders than ebook pre-orders at this point, and the physical book ones take longer to update, so there could be even more now. But anyways, all major retailers. I also am pretty active on Instagram, so you can hang out with me there. Pretty active in my Instagram stories. I also have a newsletter that I send out, and there are about 2,200 subscribers now to my newsletter. It gets fan mail. It is mostly just funny, awkward stories, but a lot of people enjoy it.
So, two things. Number one, I think people want the physical copy because your cover is gorgeous. Number two, I think there is a huge uptick in people wanting physical books as a trophy of sorts. I am one of them where if I really, really loved a book and I read it on my Kindle, I want to memorialize it and put it on my bookshelf and buy the physical copy after.
It is absolutely a physical trophy thing. I gave away a lot of art in order to try and like get any momentum. And I think it was actually like pretty successful. My strategy was I'm going to give away as many books as possible to people who I think will read it and leave a review. People are going to rate the book what they're going to rate the book. And I just want to get it out there so that I can try and like generate some word of mouth. And so I was not chasing after like a perfect 5 stars on Goodreads. I gave the book to people who I know would probably like it and would probably talk about it, but might like rate it a little bit lower. I was really lucky that the book very early on found like ARC readers who were like very passionate about it and loved it and wanted to share and crow from the rooftops about it. And so that like I could not have hoped for it to land in the hands of better people. So I am so grateful for everybody who has read it and who has left a review and who has championed it and loved it and taken it under their wing. And even for the people who the book was not for, like, that's okay. I'm still grateful that you read it and gave it a shot.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for letting us highlight your work today. We had such a blast getting to know you more and reading your book. If you like what we have to say and you want to hear more, please leave us a review and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube at Baddie Girls Book Club. And don't forget to stay baddie.
Woo!